Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today we will present and review about the book entitled Introduction to Logic. Before that, my name is Aisyah Humairah Binti Idris and my number matrix is 1203120. As we proceed through the material, this book will range from the completely computable case of propositional logic to a variant of logic that is not at all computable. For the first chapter is Introduction, that will introduce an important concept of logic through sentences. It then describes how such formalization enables the automation of logical thinking and summarize the current state of logic technology and its application. For chapter 2 is a propositional logic that consider the scientific rules that define the legal expressions in propositional logic. And then it will consider the semantics of the expressions specified by these rules. Given these semantics, it also will talk about evaluation, satisfactions, and the properties of the sentences, and it will define the concept of the propositional entailment. For chapter 3 is a satisfiability. The propositional satisfiability problem, often called the SAT, is the problem of determining whether it is a set of satisfiable sentences. So the truth table method, backtracking, and also simplification are several basic methods were used for solving SAT problems to check each or partial truth assignment to see if there is a truth assignment. For chapter 4 is a propositional proofs that describe a simple linear proof and then explain the hierarchically structured evidence where proofs can be nested within other proof. After seeing both linear and structured proof, it also describes how they are combined in popular fish proof system. For chapter 5, this chapter is dedicated to propositional resolution and start with explanation for the causal form, which is a variation of the language of propositional logic. This rule of inference is called propositional resolution or the resolution principle. Propositional resolution can be used in proof procedure that always terminates without losing completeness. For chapter 6 is a relational logic. In this chapter, a relational logic is an extension of the propositional logic that includes some additional linguistic features, constants, variables, and quantifiers. In the version of relational logic used here, there are 5 types of logical sentences: negations, conjunctions, disjunctions, implications, and equivalence. And it will also describe with syntax and semantics, and then discuss the evaluation and satisfactions. Lastly, it will also explain the equations of unsatisfiability and logical entailment for finite, omega, and general relational logic. For chapter 7 is a relational logic proof that starts by extending the Fichte system from propositional logic to a relational logic. The following in this chapter is an explanation of the system using some examples. For chapter X is resolution that describes first about unification, which is the process of determining whether two expressions can be unified. Then move on to the definitions of causal form extended to handle variables. The resolution principles follows, which is a rule of inference for relational logic analogs to the propositional resolution principle. Lastly, it will examine strategies for making the procedure more efficient. For chapter 9 is an induction, which is reasoning from the specific to general. Complete induction is where the sets of instances is exhaustive. Otherwise, incomplete induction is where the sets of instances is not exhaustive. And also will explain linear induction, tree induction, and structure induction, which is a generalization of both linear and tree induction. For chapter 10 is equality that begins by axiomatizing the equality relation as an ordinary binary relation. Then it will also discuss the substitutions of equals for equals in other expressions. Finally, we look at how to expand our proof system to reason with equality. Alternatively, the same result can be obtained in Fichte by using equality introduction and equality elimination. So, after we know or understand the details of this book, I will introduce information about this book in more detail. The title of this book is Introduction to Logic by Michael J. Nadzir and Eric Coe. This book was published by Morgan and Claypool Publishers, and their company is headquartered in San Rafael, California, USA. The edition statement is the second revised edition, and the year of publication is in 2013. This book has 163 pages and 10 chapters.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Nabila Fatini Binti Faudin. My metric number is 1203125. Two items I found in this chapter are: the first, the method of correlation of relationship to facilitate the explanation of a sentence or explanation can be understood clearly in detail of a given statement. For example, Anna likes Jackie, Hanim likes Jackie. The sentence is too difficult to understand, whereas if you use the sentence, Jackie is liked by both Anna and Hanim, it is easier and more understandable. The second is using various types of symbol, object or adverb as a relationship to explain the situation of a situation clearly and in detail.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Zahirah Mohammed Fairoz, metric number 1202728. Inshallah, today I will be discussing what I have learned from the book review called Introduction to Logic. After reading chapter 5, titled Propositional Resolution, I learned that the definition of propositional resolution is a rule of interference for propositional logic. Propositional resolution works only on expressions in closure form. A literal is either an atomic sentence or a negation of an atomic sentence. A closure is either a literal or a disjunction of literals. As mentioned earlier, there is a simple procedure for converting an arbitrary set of propositional logic sentences to an equivalent set of clauses. The conversion rules are summarized below and should be applied in order. They are firstly implications, negations, distributions, and operators. Moving on to the resolution principle. The resolution rule in propositional logic is a single valid interference rule that produces a new closure implied by two clauses containing complementary literals. A literal is a propositional variable or the negation of a propositional variable. So what is the example of propositional resolution? The kind of sentences are called propositions. If a proposition is true, then we say it has truth, value of true. If a proposition is false, its true value is false. For example, grass is green and 2 plus 5 equal 5 are propositions. The simplest and most abstract logic we can study is called propositional logic, defined by a proposition is a statement that can be either true or false. It must be one or the other, and it cannot be both.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Fatin Auni Binti Sholahudin. My metric number 1201904. In Chapter 7, Relational Logic Proof, we learned that the Fish relational logic system is an extension of the Fish propositional logic system. There are 4 ordinary rules that we need to use correctly so that we can properly understand those idiosyncrasies. Among them are universal introduction. Typically, universal introduction is used on sentences with free variables to make their quantification explicit. We can apply the rule to sentences that do not contain the variable that is quantified in the conclusion. If the variable being quantified appears in the sentence being quantified, it must not appear free in any active assumption in the current subproof or any superproof of that subproof. If we want to quantify any sentence, we must use an implication introduction to discharge the assumption, and then we can apply this universal introduction methods. Next is universal elimination. It allows us to reason from the general to the particular. In addition, we can use this universal elimination to create conclusions with free variables. In using universal elimination also, we have to be more careful to avoid any conflicts with other variables and quantifiers in the quantified sentence. A term is substitutable for a variable in a sentence if and only if no free occurrence occurs within the scope of a quantifier of some variable n.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Futri Nur Qamarina, Binti Abukhori. My metric number is 1201938. Propositional logic. Propositional logic is concerned with propositions and their interrelationships. It deals with prepositions, either it can be true or false, and relations between propositions, including the construction of arguments based on them. Compound propositions are formed by connecting propositions by logical connectives. The logical syntax of proposition begins with a set of propositional constants. Compound sentences are formed by combining simple sentences with logical operators. There are 5 types of compound sentences: negations, conjunctions, disjunctions, implications, and biconditionals are used in the logical version of proposition. There are 2 simple definitions that are useful in discussing propositional logic. First, the vocabulary of a proposition is a set of propositional constants. Second, propositional language is a set of all propositional sentences that can be formed from the propositional vocabulary. The truth assignment for proposition logic is a mapping that assigns a true value to each proposition constants in a language. The truth or falsity of a compound sentence can be determined from the determination of truth using rules based on the 5 logical operators of the language.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Ayuni bin Azmy. Metric number 1201874. Today I will talk about introduction to logic. What is the logic? Logic is one of the oldest intellectual disciplines in human history. It dates back to Aristotle. It has been studied through the century, and it is still a subject of active investigation today. We use logic is just about everything we do. We use it in our personal life. We use it in our professional activity. We use the language of logic to state observation, to define concepts, and to formalize theories. We use logical reasoning to derive conclusions from disparate information. We use logical proof to convince others of their conclusion. Element of logic. Consider the interpersonal relations of a small sorority. They are just 4 members: Abby, Bess, Cody, and Dana. Next, of all type of reasoning, deductive reasoning is the only one that guarantees its conclusion in all cases. It has some very special properties and holds a unique place in logic. In this book, we concentrate entirely on deduction and left this other form of reasoning to others. There are patterns of reasoning that are sometimes useful but do not satisfy this 3 criteria. There is inductive reasoning, abductive reasoning, and reasoning by analogy, and so forth. Induction is reasoning from the particular to the general. Abduction is reasoning from effects to possible cause. And reasoning by analogy is reasoning in which we infer a conclusion based on similarity of 2 situations. Reading guide. Although logic is a single field of study, there is more than one logic in this field. In the three main units of this book, we look to different types of logic, each more sophisticated than the last. Propositional logic is the logic of propositions. Symbols in the language represent conditions in the world, and complex sentences in the language express interrelationship among these conditions. Recap. Logic is the study of information encoded in the form of logical sentence. Each logical sentence divides the set of all possible words into two subsets: the set of words in which the sentence is true and the set of words in which the set of sentence is false.
My name is Nurul Afifah binti Mohamad Sabaruddin and my metric number is 1201943. The items that I gained from this book are each a set of sentences in propositional logic which has the propositional satisfiability problem that must be determined is satisfiable. So, there are many ways to solve and test satisfiable in this propositional satisfiability problem. The ways are truth table method, basic backtracking search, simplification and unit propagation, GSAT, and the Davis Putnam Lochman Loveland in the bracket DPLL. Furthermore, in the truth table method, every sentence is evaluated, and if a sentence evaluates to 0, then the truth assignment is not satisfied. If a satisfying found, then the sentence is satisfiable. On the other hand, in the basic backtracking search is used through by three methods that represent all of truth assignment from the root to the branch. Besides, simplification is used to simplify the sentence, and unit propagation is remove the truth assignment that not satisfied in the simplified sentence. Hence, all of these ways to test satisfiable are highly guaranteed to get the correct answer in the end of propositional logic.
My name is Faridatul Husna binti Mohamad Nazri. My metric number is 1201934. My general comments on the book Logical are that I love the book because the book is well debated and easy to understand. There are 10 chapters in this book and each chapter are leaving many benefits to the reader. If you read the book, you will understand more about the propositional logic, propositional resolution, propositional proofs, satisfiability, relational logic proofs, resolution, induction, and equality. If you have finished reading logic book, you will know that logic is one of humanity's earliest intellectual disciplines. It can be traced back to Aristotle. It has been studied for ages and is still being researched now. The logic of the proposals revolves around the proposals and their interrelationships. Furthermore, the idea of a proposal here cannot be defined precisely. The problem of satisfaction of the proposal, often referred to as SAT, is the problem of determining if a set of sentences in the logic, if the proposal is satisfactory. Moreover, the proposed resolution is a powerful inference rule to propositional logic. Using the propositional resolution without axiom schemes or other rules of inference, it is possible to construct a prover theorem that is sound and comprehensive for all propositional logic. Next, relational logic is an extension of the proposal logic which resolves this problem. The trick is to increase our language with two new language capabilities, which is variables and quantifiers. The resolution principle for proposal logic. Induction is an argument that goes from specific to general. If different instances of a schema are true and there are no counterexamples, we are tempted to infer a universally quantified version of the schema. Next, the author wrote the chapters fairly and accordingly based on chapter 1 until chapter 10. The length of the book was so nice and not draggy. If you are interested in logical things, you will enjoy reading from beginning to end of this book. You will get many benefits from the chapters and will learn a new thing about logic. Last but not least, you have to read this book because this is the best book ever. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Athirah binti Abdul Ghani. My nomometry is 1203126. My comments on this book is: the text begins with basic definitions and the example for representing propositional logic and for creating truth tables. It then moves through first order logic, quantification, and proof. It ends with a look forward to more advanced applications. There is neither index and glossary, but forms are easy to find using the tables of contents. Moreover, chapters are brief and terms are relatively easy to identify within them. This textbook is very good at covering the basic. One would expect to find an introductory logic course that focuses on deductive logic. It lays things out very clearly and offers concise explanations that I think students would appreciate. This book does what it does in a way that students would find straightforward. It covers each of the main connectives separately, proof and introduction to propositional logic. The author writes in a very conversational, easy to read manner. The text is extremely clearly and simply written. As mentioned previously, the author has an accessible style that makes the content relatively easy to read and engaging. He also does a suitable job explaining technical language that is introduced in the textbook. I anticipate that a diligent student could learn all of the material in the text with little additional instruction. The examples are relevant and easy to follow. A student is able to learn about each main connective in its own chapter. The language in the text is accessible to a wide variety of audiences while ensuring that students become familiar with the technical terminology of logic. For instance, most of the major concepts are introduced through discussion of concrete examples from the history of philosophy and science. The author is thus able to introduce concepts and techniques while demonstrating their value. The book is very clear. As I remarked above, the definitions given are excellent, and this really enhances the overall clarity of the book. The book is remarkably clear and accessible to individuals with no previous background in logic. Technical terms tend to be introduced less formally at first, with rigorous necessary and sufficient conditions provided later. This is a nice way to ease the student in. For the content, I think this is good practice for students, and I appreciate the clear and accurate definitions given in the book that make this possible. The presentation of the material is careful and accurate. I found the book to be accurate and the explanations to be clear and helpful. The text is true and accurate with no error that I could discern. The terminology and exercise cover the material nicely and without bias. The book is accurate in the informations it presents. It covers the essential vocabulary clearly and gives examples and exercises to ensure the student understands the concepts. The portion of logic introduced by this text is very stable. The systems presented up to date and necessary revisions to the core ideas and techniques are unlikely for some time. The organization of the books is clear and coherent, and the text as a whole flows well, both within and across chapters. The topics of this text follow an excellence. Frankly, overall, the book, I think this is an excellent logic textbook. The problems and exercise in this book are very good and go beyond what is normally found in introductory logic books. I think that some of these problems would be especially useful for students who are interested in going on to more advanced logic course.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Nabila binti Mohamad Nadzir. My metric number is 1202913. The conclusion for Introduction to Logic is: logic is a language for reasoning. It is a collection of rules we use when doing logical reasoning. Human reasoning has been observed over centuries from at least the times of Greeks, and patterns appearing in reasoning have been abstracted, and streamlined. The foundation of the logic was laid down by a British mathematician, George Boole, and it was further developed and used in an attempt to derive all of mathematics by Gottlob Frege, a German mathematician. A British philosopher, Bertrand Russell, found a flaw in basic assumptions in Frege's attempt, but he, together with Alfred Whitehead, developed Frege's work further and repaired the damage. The logic we study today is more or less along this line. In logic, we are interested in true or false of statements and how the truth or falsehood of a statement can be determined from other statements. However, instead of dealing with individual specific statements, we are going to use symbols to represent arbitrary statements so that the results can be used in many similar but different cases. The formalization also promotes the clarity of thought and eliminates mistakes. There are various types of logic, such as logic of sentences, propositional logic, logic of objects, predicate logic, logic involving uncertainties, logic dealing with fuzziness, temporal logic. Here we are going to be concerned with propositional logic and predicate logic, which are fundamental to all types of logic. That's all. Thank you.